Welcome back to Nightly Nonsense. We're trying to make some sense out of the nonsense all around us. Hey, we're picking up in John chapter 10. I asked you last night, what are you bringing into the sheepfold? What's the garbage? What's the junk of the day that you're bringing in? What are the good things that you're bringing in? What are you bringing in to the sheepfold? Let's pick it up in verse 1 of this story in John chapter 10. It says, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, the man is a thief and a robber." You know, the things of God, they tend not to sneak up on us in a bad way. They sneak up on us when we're not paying attention. They sneak up on us when we're looking for something different, and God's like, hey, I'm over here, right? But this whole concept in verse 1 is about the things of God enter through the gate, right? They enter in by the door, right? That's important, right? Because Jesus talks about being the doorway, right? He's not the gatekeeper, right? That's what this says. He's the doorway, right? The things of God enter through Jesus. It's how we can sift things out. It's how you can look at your life right now and you can know the things that are from God and the things that are not from God. The thief, the enemy of your soul, is never going to enter through the front door. He's always going to enter in some sneaky way, trying to get over, trying to appear in the garden. If you look back to Genesis chapter 3, you got Adam and Eve who were placed in the garden, and we're still trying to figure out how the enemy ended up in the garden. He just shows up one day in the garden and starts talking to Eve, who then talks to Adam, who then all three get to talk to God right after the fall. But the two were placed in the garden, right? Those that are legitimately in the sheepfold have gotten in through the door, right? The gatekeeper knows them, right? Knows who he's allowing in. But it says here, he who does not enter the sheepfold, they're thieves and they're robbers, right? It can look really good and still be about thievery and robbery, still trying to rob you of stuff. You can think you're on point and it can still be trying to rob you. God uses godly methods. Now, let me be super clear, because somebody's going to be like, Andy, you're always talking about this, so let me be clear. God's ways are not our ways. That's why you have to seek God. There are people who have entered the sheepfold who it looks really close to the doorway, but they didn't. They climbed over the door right before the doorway. Right? They climbed over the fence or somewhere else along the property. Sometimes things look really, really close to God's way, but they're not God's way. We sift through. Now, again, that's not your understanding. That's God's understanding. And one of the ways we do that is by trusting, right, the door. We trust that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. Whatever comes through him, right, is good. We don't get to say that it's bad. Don't call it unclean if it's clean. So one of the things that we need to be able to do is to make sure that we are understanding the door, that we're putting our faith in Jesus, so that when Jesus allows things in, they may look like a thief and a robber, but they came through the door. There may be moments that look like, right, their sickness and disease and all of those things. Sometimes God allows those in through the front door for whatever his purpose is. So this is a very tricky thing. You have to be in tune with God to understand the things of God. But understand this: there are the things of God, and then there are the things that are trying to rob from the things of God. And they can look super close, right? They can look like really good moments, right? Or they can seem like really, really off moments and bad moments, and we want to call them unclean, and God says, that's not unclean. It came through the front door. This is something that I have allowed. Again, you're not the door, nor are you the gatekeeper. You're not in control of the door. what you and I are is part of the sheepfold. We're inside the sheepfold. And one of the things that Jesus is trying to get across here is, hey, listen, if you see something coming over the wall, that's not the shepherd. Don't follow them. When they're trying to hoist you up over the wall to get you out, that's not how God works, right? God works through the door, which is Jesus. So you need to know what are the things of Jesus and what are the things that are not of Jesus. This is Jesus. We can figure out who Jesus is here. But at the same time, we also need to pray. We need to pray and we need to ask, like, hey, I'm confused here in the moment. This doesn't really look like a God thing, but is it a God thing? Let me give you this a practical example in the Bible. There was already a king of Israel when David was anointed king. It doesn't look like a God thing for God to have two kings. It doesn't look like a God thing for God to anoint somebody else while there's another person being king. But it was all of God. God was anointing David in the present for a future moment. Right? So we would look at that. We'd be like, I don't know. I don't understand this. It doesn't make much sense to me. Right? But God, it does make sense. David wasn't coming up over the walls, being a robber in the sheep. He was actually walking through the front door to get into the sheepfold. Right? Be careful. Be discerning. Pay attention, right, to the door. Know the door. Learn Jesus. Right? Learn how to hear from Jesus, because there's going to be moments where people are going to assure you that something is a robber and it's not. There's going to be times where people are going to assure you that this is a great thing. It's walking through the front door, and it's not. It's not doing that. So look at your life. Are you able to discern what's coming through the front door and what's coming over the wall? Not every opportunity, right, that presents itself walked through the front door, and not every surprise came over the wall. So you think about that, chew on that. We'll see you next time. Nightly Nonsense.